Imagine standing at this heavily guarded border between two entirely different worlds.
Right.
On one side, you have the late 1970s English new wave scene. It's loud, it's urgent, and it's fueled by this, cynical punk-adjacent rebellion.
Yeah, they were actively trying to tear down the old guard of music.
Exactly. But then on the other side of that border, you have the deeply traditional, highly polished, sorrow-filled landscape of American country music.
A completely different universe.
Right, a world built on reverence for the past, pedal steel guitars, and just these deeply established conventions.
And historically speaking, crossing that line, I mean, it was viewed as a kind of professional sabotage.
Oh, for sure.
The cultures, the audiences, the aesthetic expectations, they were miles apart. Like if you were an artist in 1978, you pick a side and you stayed there.
It stayed in your lane. It's like trying to power, I don't know, a modern digital smartphone with a 19th century steam engine.
That's a great way to put it.
The mechanics are just so fundamentally different that combining them seems almost absurd. But today, we're doing a deep dive into the historical records, the liner notes, and the studio sessions of a single track that really just shouldn't exist.
It's a fascinating anomaly.
It really is. It didn't just cross that musical border, it built a permanent bridge right over it. The song is called Stranger in the House.
Yeah.
And the mission of our deep dive today is to examine how this one track bridged those two drastically different musical universes and how it served as a pivotal stepping stone in a major artist's career. Okay, let's unpack this.
We really have a remarkable trail of evidence to explore today. We are going to look at a detailed breakdown of the song's incredibly unusual release history.
Which is wild, by the way.
It is wild, and we'll look at its core lyrical architecture
Right.
and the critical reception it faced. Because, this isn't just a simple collaboration where two musicians happen to bump into each other in a studio hallway.
Right. Wasn't an accident.
No, this is a profound, intentional genre crossover.
So, let's set the scene for everyone listening. We are talking about a late 70s track written by the English musician and massive new wave star Elvis Costello. But it ultimately ends up being recorded as a duet in the summer of 1978 with the absolute legendary American country music star George Jones.
George Jones, yeah.
I mean, an English new wave icon crossing into American country music feels entirely out of left field. So we really need to look at the intention behind this.
Well, if we look at the 2005 liner notes written by Holly Jones Warren, this is for the reissue of George Jones's album, My Very Special Guest. She knows that Costello wrote Stranger in the House, specifically with Jones in mind.
Wait, specifically for him?
Yes. He didn't just write a pop song and then later decide, let's retrofit it into a country style.
He sat down and wrote it for him.
He did. Costello was actually quoted as saying, George Jones was my guiding light whenever I wrote in the country idiom.
Wow.
And as biographer David Goldstone points out in his research, Stranger in the House marked Costello's very first exploration into country music.
I have to pause on that quote. Guiding light.
Yeah, it's strong.
It's such a reverent, almost spiritual term. The contrast is staggering to me. Like, it is just strange for a cutting-edge, new wave star, someone who is literally defining modernity and British angst for a generation of kids.
Right.
To look toward a traditional American country star as his ultimate creative beacon. It's like a modern tech entrepreneur citing a 19th century blacksmith as their main inspiration.
That's exactly it. And what's fascinating here is that it reveals something fundamental about the creative process.
What do you mean?
Well, true artistry, the kind that actually moves the needle, ignores the artificial boundaries we construct. We put things in boxes to make them easier to sell. New wave, country, pop.
Per marketing categories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But an artist just sees tools. There is a lesson here for anyone listening who's trying to solve a complex problem. Sometimes the tool you need isn't in your industry's toolbox.
Oh, I like that.
You have to look at completely different disciplines to find your breakthrough. When you step entirely outside your immediate field and find a guiding light in a discipline with completely different rules, you bring a completely fresh perspective back to your own work.
He was definitely looking for a new tool. But, if this was his very first foray into country music, he certainly didn't just jump straight into the deep end with George Jones on day one.
No, he did not.
He tested the waters, and that led to a release history for this song that is surprisingly complicated. Like, it is a piece of music in a desperate search for its final form.
The chronological journey of this song, before it finally became that famous duet, is just a masterclass in an artist relentlessly working a piece of material,
Risk.
testing its structural integrity in different environments.
It really is.
We actually have 3 distinct iterations to examine.
So let's look at this timeline because the mechanics of how he released this are fascinating. Version 1 surfaces in March of 1978.
Yep, the solo version.
Right, a solo version by Costello. But he doesn't just put it on the track list of his new album.
That would be too easy.
Exactly. It's released as a free 7-inch single, and it is only included with the first 1,000 copies of his second UK album, This Year's Model. Just the first 1,000.
That is an incredibly restricted release strategy.
Right.
Especially for an artist whose profile was rising as rapidly as Costello's at the time.
Which makes me question the logic of that mechanism. I mean, why go through the physical expense of pressing a separate 7-inch record just to give it away to a tiny fraction of your audience?
It does seem counterintuitive.
If you think about how a limited release physically works, you buy the main LP, you slide it out of the sleeve, and this extra, unannounced piece of vinyl just drops out.
Like a secret prize.
Yeah. Was he deliberately trying to hide his country experiment from the mainstream new wave audience? Like, was he worried a traditional country song would dilute the brand he was building with the aggressive sound of This Year's Model?
Well, that limited run is a brilliant psychological tool. It reflects an artist tentatively testing a new idiom, to use Costello's own word.
Okay, how so?
By limiting it to 1,000 physical copies, you are essentially executing a soft launch. You are handing this jarring genre shift directly to the die-hard fans, the ones lining up to buy the very first pressing on release day.
Ah, the super fan.
Exactly. It creates an underground hype, a secret shared between the artist and the core fan base.
Oh, I see.
It provides a safe space to experiment with this new country tool without alienating the broader, more casual fan base. People who might be genuinely confused if a country ballad suddenly interrupted their punk-influenced record.
That makes total sense as a protective measure. You don't want to freak out the casual listener. So that's the solo test run in March 1978. Then we get to version 3. And yes, we are skipping version 2 for a second because the sequence is what makes this wild.
The sequence is crazy, yeah.
The final duet with George Jones, which clocks in at 3 minutes and 37 seconds long, by the way, was recorded on July 18th, 1978. It was produced by Billy Sherrill for the Epic label on Jones's album, My Very Special Guests, though it wouldn't hit the shelves until 1979.
So look at what he does. He executes the secret solo release in March, then flies to Nashville and records the massive duet with his guiding light in July.
Huge moment.
In a standard narrative, the journey of the song ends right there, the moment you record it with the legend you wrote it for.
You've sung it with the master, the pinnacle has been reached. But then we get version 2.
Yeah.
On October 23rd, 1978, 3 full months after he recorded the ultimate duet with George Jones Costello, goes and records a third version of the song with his band, The Attractions, for a John Peel session.
Yep.
Why is he still messing with it? I mean, he already has the definitive version in the can.
It's obsessive, right? But to understand why he couldn't let it go, you have to look at the mechanism behind a John Peel session.
Okay, lay it out for us.
For those unfamiliar, a John Peel session wasn't just another casual studio booking. It was a live-in-the-studio broadcast on BBC Radio 1. It was an institution in the UK.
Super influential.
Massively. And it was known for capturing the raw, unpolished live energy of indie and punk bands. It was the complete opposite of a slick, heavily produced Billy Sherrill session in Nashville.
Ah, so it's stripping away all the polish.
Exactly. He had to stress test the song. Think about it. He proved it worked as a secret solo acoustic track.
Right.
He proved it worked in a massive, traditional country setting with the master of the genre. Now, he needed to know if the architecture of the song was strong enough to survive the raw, aggressive energy of his own band, The Attractions, and broadcast live to the critical British indie audience, no less.
That is bold.
He was obsessively making sure the song held up under every possible condition.
But to truly understand why this song could survive being dragged through all these different environments, we have to look at what was actually inside the lyrics.
We do.
We need to examine what demanded such a specific obsessive treatment. Here's where it gets really interesting.
If you look closely at the lyrics, the song is a masterclass in country architecture. In fact, music scholars like James E. Perrone have pointed out that Costello fundamentally, quote, understood the country genre musically and lyrically.
He really did his homework.
He did. Perrone points to one specific lyrical metaphor at the core of the song that anchors the entire piece. The character in the song equates his own home with a transient hotel.
A Transient Hotel. Wow. It carries so much weight.
It does.
It's entirely about this theme of deep disconnection and alienation from his own family. You walk into the house you own, the house where your family lives, and you feel like you are just renting a room by the hour.
You are a ghost in your own life.
Exactly.
And Perron notes that this concept, quote, rings true as a metaphor that could easily be expected in an American country song.
It fits perfectly.
Because it is the absolute quintessential theme of the genre. The heartbreak of the domestic space falling apart.
And this realization changes the whole perspective on the genre crossover for me.
How so?
Well, when you think about English new wave music in the late 70s, it is heavily fueled by angst.
Right. Teenage angst, societal rebellion.
Yes, it's about alienation and disconnection from society at large. Then you look at American country music, and it is fueled by sorrow. It's about alienation and disconnection from the family unit.
Oh, that's a brilliant connection.
These two seemingly opposite genres are actually just two sides of the exact same emotional coin. Alienation is the ultimate emotional bridge connecting the punk club in London to the honky-tonk in Nashville.
They are expressing the exact same human condition, fundamentally built for people who feel left behind or out of place.
Yeah.
And if we break down the mechanics of that phrase, transient hotel, we can see why it works so universally.
Let's break it down.
Making the familiar like your own living room feel starkly unfamiliar, like a transient hotel, is a remarkably powerful tool for communication.
It really hits you.
It forces your audience to reevaluate something they take for granted. Using a metaphor that suddenly renders the safe and familiar as cold and transactional, it breaks the audience out of their comfort zone. It mirrors the exact discomfort the character in the song is feeling.
It shakes you awake. You can't just passively listen to a line like that. It demands your attention.
Absolutely.
But, despite the fact that the lyrics were a perfect, universally translatable fit for the country genre, the actual recording of that ultimate duet in July 1978 left the song's creator with some incredibly heavy self-doubt.
It's kind of tragic, really.
It is. The aftermath of this collaboration brings us to its critical reception, its legacy, and Costello's rather harsh self-critique.
The fallout from the duet recording is a study in contrasting perspectives. Because despite the lyrical brilliance we just analyzed, the resulting track was viewed by the contemporary press as quite an anomaly.
They didn't know what to do with it.
Exactly. The renowned Rolling Stone critic Dave Marsh reviewed it and famously described the song as a lovely but bizarre country oddity.
Lovely but bizarre country oddity. That has to be one of the most backhanded compliments a critic could possibly invent.
It really is.
I mean, it acknowledges the craft while simultaneously alienating the final product.
It highlights how genuinely jarring it was for critics to hear these two worlds collide on a single piece of vinyl. They just didn't have a box to put it in.
No box at all.
But from a historical perspective, that oddity was necessary. Professor Perron notes that this bizarre experiment actually paved the way for Costello's later highly successful deep dives into country music. Most notably, his album Almost Blue in 1981.
Which is a classic.
Right, it wasn't a dead end. It was the doorway he had to walk through to evolve.
Yet, Costello himself didn't view it as a triumphant doorway at the time.
Not at all.
When asked about the duet later, Costello's reflection is frankly shocking, especially given how much he revered George Jones and how hard he worked to get this song made.
What did he say?
He said, and I quote, "It was just a happy coincidence that they happened to be doing a duet record and I got invited to sing with him."
Wow, he is completely minimizing his own agency in the creation of the record. He wrote the song.
He wrote it specifically for Jones.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop at minimizing his involvement. He follows it up with this ultimate crushing regret. He says, "Truthfully, I wish I had a George Jones solo recording of that song because my contribution to the record is probably the low point of it."
Oh, man. That is a staggering level of self-deprecation from an artist who was, at that very moment, conquering the global charts.
It's the ultimate fanboy dilemma.
It really is.
Imagine you spend your life admiring a master of their craft. You study their mechanics, you learn their idiom, and you create a masterpiece specifically designed for your absolute idol.
A dream come true.
Right. By some miracle, the stars align, and you are invited to actually perform it with them in the studio. But then you look back at the finished product and you feel like you just photobombed their great work.
Photobombed. That's a perfect way to describe it.
You feel like your presence actively distracts from the art, and you just want yourself erased from the picture so you can look at your idol in peace.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are really examining here is massive, almost paralyzing imposter syndrome.
Oh, 100%.
Elvis Costello was not an amateur trying his luck. He was a highly successful, critically acclaimed star with a massive following. Yet the moment he was placed next to his guiding light, all of that external validation vanished. He felt entirely inadequate in the new environment.
It's so relatable, though.
It is. He convinced himself he ruined his own creation. But the crucial takeaway is that despite Costello's intense internal self-doubt, and despite the critics calling it an oddity, the structural experiment worked.
Because it permanently altered his creative trajectory and led directly to Almost Blue.
Yes. He couldn't have achieved the mastery of his 1981 country album without first enduring the discomfort of being the bizarre country oddity in 1978.
He had to go through it.
The act of stepping into that Nashville studio and crossing that heavily guarded genre border broke something open for him creatively, even if he couldn't see it at the time.
We started this deep dive looking at an impassable border between two musical nations. We watched an artist test the waters by sneaking a secret 7-inch record into the hands of 1,000 diehard fans.
The soft launch.
Yep. We saw him relentlessly stress test a metaphor about a transient hotel across completely different broadcast formats until it perfectly bridged the angst of British punk and the sorrow of American country.
A brilliant bridge.
And finally, we saw him stand shoulder to shoulder with his idol, only to be crushed by his own imposter syndrome. So what does this all mean? The takeaway for you listening right now is to never be afraid of producing your own bizarre oddities.
Exactly.
Because even if an experiment makes you feel entirely out of your depth, even if the critics don't understand it, stepping entirely out of your comfort zone into a new discipline can permanently alter the trajectory of your work. It did for Costello.
As we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. And this builds directly on that intense self-critique Costello had.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about Costello sitting in the playback room, listening to the final mix of Stranger in the House, genuinely wishing his own voice was magically erased from the record so that only George Jones was left singing the words he wrote.
It breaks your heart a little.
It raises a fascinating question for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends. In your own life, or in your own work, have you ever built a vehicle or an idea so perfectly suited for someone else that the absolute greatest contribution you could make was actually to step aside and let them drive it?
Wow, what an incredible thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive across musical borders, and we will catch you next time.